Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm finally back on my feet. This sickness absolutely whooped my butt, but I'm feeling back to normal and excited to talk about some more video games. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon. So this is a first-person open-world RPG with a setup and structure you'll probably find familiar. It's got a dual-hand sword and sorcery combat system that lets you mix and match however you please. Whatever your combo, you'll be using to slay a host of fantasy creatures, from skeletons and bandits to ghosts and goblins. There's tons of interesting characters and quest lines with you making choices that impact the outcomes. The world is full of interactivity and focused on exploration as you discover dungeons, castles, caverns, and plenty of hidden areas with secrets to uncover. Basically, think along the lines of Skyrim, but at a smaller scale and in a much darker fantasy setting. That is essentially what this game is, to the point where just about every other video I've seen about it has referred to this as an indie Skyrim. Having played quite a bit myself, I'd say that's a fairly accurate statement. So the game has been in early access since March 2023, and in that time it's received numerous updates, the most recent of which, patch 0.9, comes out this week and puts the game that much closer to the finish line. The content here, according to the developer, is, quote, in 95% of its final quality that players will experience in the full 1.0 release. So Awaken Realms reached out for a sponsored video. They let me take an early look at this update and asked me to share it with all of you. Considering the game's very positive reception over on Steam and the fact that I've really enjoyed what I've played myself, I was more than happy to do so. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in and check out Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon. So the game begins in what is a very familiar setting. You find yourself locked up in a prison being interrogated by one of its guards. The process of you explaining your circumstances as to how you got there actually determines your character's starting playstyle, giving you boost to certain skill lines and unlocking your initial weapons and armor based on the answers that you pick. And then, just as the guard is about to take you away, as luck would have it, a stranger appears, setting you free in the nick of time. And from there, you set out exploring the prison compound, moving through its numerous rooms, hallways, and corridors, and seeing all of the stuff inside. They teach you the basics of combat as you fight back zombie-like creatures, the guards, and this faction of red priests that are holding you captive, as well as running these evil experiments. You'll be looting in a very Skyrim-like fashion, picking up a variety of objects, armors, weapons, consumables, and resources that are found pretty much everywhere, on bodies, in chests, in barrels, on top of tables, and on shelves. You'll also find locked doors and containers, which you open via a lock-picking mini-game that's very familiar. Pretty much all of this is very, very familiar feeling if you've played Skyrim or any game like it. It's very analogous, pretty much one for one in a lot of aspects. Now, beyond your introduction to all of these basic features and systems, you're exploring the space and uncovering all sorts of story. You're going to find notes from deceased prisoners, medical logs from the Red Priest experiments and what happened, and then other characters who are still alive, pretty much all of which that you come across will have various things to say to you, oftentimes leading to additional side quests. And of all of this, I gotta say, while the game certainly doesn't have quite the same level of polish as its AAA counterparts, it definitely delivers on a very similar experience, and I just found myself feeling right at home playing through the opening hours of this game. All right, so you make your way through the prison, you're fighting, you're looting, you're talking NPCs, and then after a trippy romp through some alternate dimension, which I will hold off on spoilers here as this is tied into the main narrative, you eventually make your way out, emerging on the shores of a beach, from which you take a boat trip to the initial large open world zone on the continent of Avalon. This is called the Horns of the South. And it's here where the game really kicks into gear and really starts to open up. You've got this massively large play space dotted all throughout with tons of varied points of interest to explore, and you're free to approach any and all of this however you please. It is a full-on open world RPG, and exploration is one of the key elements here. Now, of course, there's a main story quest. This is initially guiding you to the first major town in this zone, but you can take as long as you want to get there. In fact, I spent my first 3 to 4 hours just exploring the nearby area, and there's a whole lot to see. You've got coastal docks overrun with these waterlogged zombies with shells on their heads blowing water bubbles at you. There are flooded-in mines with entire troops of bandits staked up inside. A foggy cemetery infested with skeletons. In that same cemetery, cemetery, you'll find an entrance into a crypt with the powerful necromancer guarding its treasures. There's an ancient tree with an underground lair protected by druids, an old abandoned stronghold, a massive derelict bridge, and tons of other locations. The list goes on and on, just a bunch of varied areas, all of which housing a variety of enemies to fight with unique loot to collect, secrets and quests to discover. It's exactly what you expect. And while exploration and the discovery side of things certainly is a main focus and you'll be spending a lot of time doing it, combat also plays a fairly major role. So as mentioned, they use a dual hand system where you can mix and match however you please between your left and your right hands, choosing from a variety of melee, range, defensive, and spell options to go in either slot. So for example, you've got a bunch of different shields, spears, swords, axes, maces, daggers, bows, and then a wide range of spells from several different schools of magic. You've got the left and the right hand slot to fill, and you can place any combo of these various weapons in whatever hand that you like, although there are of course certain weapons like big two-handed swords and bows which take up both slots, but for the most part, many of the weapons that I found in this game and the spells are all one hand tied, and you can choose which side you want it on. Now the actual combat itself includes you mixing light and heavy attacks for most of all of these combinations of weapons, with the melee, range, and spells all having light and heavy variations. There's also different movement variations like sprint attacks for a lot of these weapons. As for defense, you've got dashing, blocking, as well as perfectly timed parries, which if done properly slows down your enemy, giving you a great chance to counter strike. And both your offensive and defensive moves make use of a stamina bar that you have to closely manage. Usually this means getting in a couple of strikes or one strike and some defensive move, and then having to pause for a second for the bar to refill before going again. I should also note that there are 4 different weapon loadout slots that you can quickly swap between with hotkeys 1 through 4, in which you'll likely want to place 4 separate combos of weapons and or spells. So for me, most recently, I've been having a 1 melee focus slot using a spear and a shield, with the other 3 slot loadouts focused on different spell casting combinations, as I am currently playing like this necromancer mage build. And playing with the game's magic, gotta say, has been quite a lot of fun. They've got a really interesting system here. So spells are actually like physical items that you will find out in the world, whether you loot it from an enemy, from a chest, or wherever. And then once you have the spell, it will then be equipped in either hand, just like weapons and shields are, with every spell having 2 variations, a light and heavy variation. And this is more than just like the light variation is faster and does less damage, and the heavy variation is charged and does more damage. These are actually quite variable iterations of the spell. So for example, one of the first spells that I got, Burning Ember, the light attack will shoot a small projectile that applies the burn, whereas a heavy attack actually forms a larger explosive ball that is lobbed out in an arc and does damage in an area. Another spell that I got early on, Blood Transfusion, the light attack will shoot a projectile that applies a bleed, while the heavy attack actually directly drains health from your target. Or there's Hailstone, an ice spell. The light attack shoots a projectile that chills, where the heavy one shoots a large chunk that applies a large debuff. Or there's Skeleton Army, and this is how I moved into my Necromancer tree. Using the heavy attack will summon up a skeleton, whereas the light attack commands any of your active skeletons to attack the target on your crosshairs. Or the spell that I got most recently, Flame Torrent, the light attack does this quick bash, damaging enemies within melee range and knocking them back, whereas the heavy attack creates a steady stream of fire that does massive amounts of damage. This thing is literally just melting everything that I come across now. It seems incredibly overpowered, and I loved it. So beyond exploring the world and engaging in everything, the game's combat has been definitely one of the things that I've enjoyed the most. I think it's quite well done, especially considering this is a AA title from a smaller team. I've been very impressed with the feel of combat. It's just thoroughly enjoyable to slash and or throw spells at the game's various enemies. Really like going through and engaging in combat. Now, being an open world RPG, the game is also very narrative heavy with all of the expected touch points. However, unlike the sort of lighter, more colorful spin that many RPGs nowadays take, this game, being set in the world of Tainted Grail, embraces dark fantasy with quite a grim and twisted reimagining of Arthurian legends. So there's the main story quest, which takes you on the larger grand narrative involving King Arthur himself, and you trying to help help him in this rather tough predicament that he finds himself in. Then there are loads of side quests, most of which you'll unlock by speaking directly to the game's various friendly NPCs. In fact, pretty much every single NPC that you come across in the game that isn't an enemy is gonna have a lot to say to you. These things are really, really chatty with multiple topics to discuss, and again, in many cases, these conversations will unlock a new side quest or objective. You're also gonna find quests that are starting via objects that you come across in the world, and then a plethora of non-quest but world-building items you come across, various things to read, including notes, books, scrolls, and so on. There are quite a few different progression systems in the game, with them using a lot of more old-school proficiency level-based mechanics. So there are proficiencies themselves. For just about every activity that you do, there is a proficiency level. The more you do it, the more experience you gain, the higher level gets, the better you become. So for example, most of the various weapon types have skill lines. The higher level, the more damage you deal. There's athletics, which increases your sprint and swim speed the higher it goes. Armor increases the amount of damage blocked. Agility means more jump height. The magic tree gives you more spell damage and reduced mana cost. The crafting trees increase the quality of any items that you make. There are also 6 different attributes in the game. You start at level 1 for each of these when you begin the game, and then as you level up, you will gain attribute points, and you can spend them in whichever of the 6 that you want, depending on the bonuses you prefer. The strength line is melee damage, stamina, and armor weight multiplier. Endurance is health, encumbrance, and stam regen. Dexterity is attack speed, stealth, and range damage. Spirituality, which is the one that I've heavily invested in, is spell power, mana max, as well as mana regen. There's also practicality, which gives you crafting bonus, weak spot damage, stamina and mana cost reduction, and bartering. And then perception, which is crit damage, crit chance, as well as sneak damage. And then on top of that, each attribute class also has its own sub-list of skill trees, like actual skill trees. So you also get 1 point to spend here every time you level up, and this is separate from the point to increase the attribute themselves. And these points are going to be tailored and spent in any of these trees, which just are focused on different sorts of play styles that you expect from an RPG. So for example, I have fully invested in a few of the caster trees in the spirituality branch, spending most of my points so far into summoning to help boost up all my zombies, along with spending a few points in the general caster buffs, like increasing my base magic, my regeneration, and my damage. There's also crafting in the game. Currently 3 professions that you can check out. Alchemy is for making potions, cooking is for food, and then there's handcrafting, which is what they refer to for making armor and weapons. For each of these, you're going to find recipes out in the world which teach you either how to make specific items or straight up entire sets for gear, for example. Handcrafting is also going to let you improve any existing items that you find in a few different ways, like increasing their level, which boosts their base stats, attaching relics for extra perks, or reducing the weight of the items, as the game does have carry capacity in it for you to manage. Now, beyond all of those basics of the game, as mentioned, this week patch 0.9 is getting released, and with this comes quite a large overhaul to all of the existing content, along with a host of new features and mechanics. Now, in the current build, you're going to have the prologue, which takes roughly 1 to 2 hours, depending on how thoroughly you explore it, as well as in all of the game's Act 1, which is going to be roughly 20 hours of gameplay. Both of these have been revamped with a bunch of newly added content, new areas, NPCs, and loot. But then beyond that, patch 0.9 also includes an updated character creator with a lot more options for how your character looks. There are new mini bosses, new weapons and spells to find. They've enhanced the magic system. They've done updates to various skill trees. There's been a bunch of crafting improvements, a whole bunch of visual effects and performance upgrades, and the game is getting an entirely new demo on both Xbox and PlayStation 5. And that pretty much does it for our updated look at Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. I gotta say, while the game is certainly rough around the edges and far from as polished as a lot of its AAA contemporaries, I've been quite impressed every time I've played this game with what they've managed to put together. It's clear that the game was made by a smaller team and on a smaller budget, but also it was done in a way that, despite the shortcomings, it's a genuinely fun experience, as is evidenced by the game's very positive reception that it's received from players over on Steam. The people who have played this really enjoy it, myself included. This most recent update has just made things even better, and I am very much so looking forward to the eventual 1.0 full release, which as of now is planned for sometime later this year. So if you'd like to learn more and check out Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon yourself, go ahead and use my link in the description below. channel. But that does it for today. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the vid. I'll see you next time.